The year was 1964, north of Maddox, Montana. Brennan was reaching the tail end of his solo cross-country expedition. He had started from his home state of California 2 weeks prior, adventuring through northern Nevada, Idaho, and now the northern section of Montana. At this point, it felt like he was driving to nowhere. No destination in mind, just a direction, northeast. The trees thinned and revealed long stretches of open plains, hills scattered across the land. It was nothing his 1962 International Scout couldn't handle. He still had 2 extra tanks of gas in the back, a few marijuana joints, and about 8 days' worth of food if he planned correctly. The dirt road stretched endlessly ahead, weaving through a wilderness that seemed untouched for decades. A storm was building behind the distant mountains, and as the wind picked up, the temperature began to drop. Brennan adjusted his jacket collar and flicked his cigarette ash out the window. He hadn't seen another soul for hours. He didn't even know why he'd taken this back road. Curiosity, maybe. He had a few days to kill, a little money in his pocket, and no one waiting for him back home. The scout bounced over a stretch of potholes as the dirt turned muddy in spots. His eyes caught something up ahead, a weathered wooden sign, half sunk in the grass, crooked and nearly unreadable. The old sign read, "Crow House Hotel, vacancy." It definitely seemed like an odd spot for a hotel, perhaps an old place for gold miners of the past. As he pulled ahead a quarter mile, he slowed down, squinting through the windshield. Tucked back in the trees beyond a warped gravel drive stood an old, wide 3-story building. It wasn't quite falling apart, but it had the air of a place barely held together by rust and peeling paint. It was a wooden structure with an old wooden sign reading Crow House Hotel. The front porch sagged slightly, and a single porch light flickered dimly in the growing dusk. He parked in front, stepping out into the cold air. Thunder rumbled far off as he walked to the front door and pushed it open. Inside, the lobby was dim and musty, the scent of damp wood and something faintly sour lingering in the air. A dusty chandelier hung overhead. At the front desk sat an old man in a brown cardigan, thick glasses perched on his nose. He didn't look up at first, just kept scribbling in a ledger with a leaky fountain pen.
"You open?"
The old man looked up slowly.
"Room for one?"
"Yeah, just for a night or 2.
The old man pushed a worn key across the desk.
$15, 3rd floor, room 306, end of the hall."
"You got anything on the 1st floor?"
The man didn't smile.
307, only 3rd floor. We got some plumbing issues in the 2nd, and the 1st is all occupied. We don't get many folks like you out this way."
Brennan nodded uneasily.
"I noticed."
He thought it was extremely odd because the place just felt empty. There was nobody around in the lobby, just old, dreary paintings of the frontier. After a short, awkward conversation, the old man offered to show him around. The building was larger than it seemed. The long, carpeted halls smelled like mildew. Old wallpaper peeled in strips, and the wall sconces flickered inconsistently. Halfway through the brief tour, Brennan felt something, an odd pull, like a pressure in his ears. The 3rd floor hallway stretched unnaturally long. At the far end, past his assigned room, was another door, room 313. The hallway beyond it felt darker, colder. He saw beads strung over that door and odd symbols scratched faintly into the wood. He made an excuse to cut the tour short and stepped back outside to get some fresh air. That's when he saw it. The front passenger side tire of his Scout was flat, punctured deep into the tread like something had stabbed it. He knelt down to check it. No nail, no rock, just a deep, deliberate stab. His face tightened. He stood up and looked around. The storm clouds had thickened, and the last rays of sun were quickly fading. The nearest town was at least 100 miles back, and the lobby phone was dead. Brennan went back inside, slightly tempered.
Hey, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Somebody here slashed my tire. You seen anybody?
Not a thing.
Well, shit, you got any spares around here?
The old man nodded toward the back.
We keep a few old trucks out there. Maybe you can find some.
Brennan cursed under his breath and took his bag upstairs. His room had a stagnant vibe, like it needed to be aired out. Brennan opened the window to let in some fresh air. The room was lit by only one old lamp on the corner bedstand. Old yellow patterned wallpaper peeled in many sections, with one area by the bathroom showing water damage, a big, soggy, moldy spot in the wood. That first night, the unease worsened. The room was cold, but there was one old fireplace in the center. He remembered seeing a small pile of wood on the side of the building. He decided to go outside and grab some before the rain unleashed from the clouds. On his way downstairs, past the creepy old portrait paintings, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. Nobody was at the front desk. The place was dark. He noticed an old man he hadn't seen before standing over in a corner, smoking a cigarette and staring straight ahead. Brennan waved and said hello, but got no response. He stepped outside into the cold night air and quickly ran over to the side of the hotel. The thick, dark storm clouds were brewing ahead. He grabbed a handful of logs and stood up, looking straight ahead toward the junkyard out back. He noticed what looked like the shadow of a person standing just beyond the faint light coming from someone's open window at the back of the hotel. He didn't think much of it, but it caught him off guard. How dark the figure was. A man standing motionless, appearing as a deep black shadow, just standing there looking right at him. It gave him an uneasy feeling, and he quickly jogged back inside as the sky rumbled above, about to let out a deep pour of rain. On his way back upstairs past the second floor, he heard what sounded like a man crying and pleading, then laughing. Very off-putting. There was only one other truck in the parking lot on the far side, a rusty Ford F1, but it looked like it still ran. He was starting to think the place was just filled with crazy people and weirdos. A loud crack of thunder shook the whole hotel as the skies above began a torrential downpour that would last all night. Brennan got the fire going and immediately felt a sense of ease. He took off his shoes and pants and sat back on the bed. It creaked with old springs. But he was feeling the exhaustion after the long drive. At one point just after midnight, he awoke from a deep sleep, soaked in sweat, with the echo of a woman's voice whispering in his ear. When he sat up, he felt a burning sensation on his back, like someone had drawn something onto his skin. He stared at the fire for a moment, hearing the rain beating down on the old roof. The sound of a leak could be heard in the room beside him. He was just thankful it wasn't leaking in his room. As he stared at the crackling fire, he drifted back to sleep. He fell into a deep, dredging sleep and dreamed of being dragged down a hallway, candles flickering, chanting, echoing in some unholy tongue. Old, haggard, filthy people stood on either side of him. He was being dragged toward that room at the end of the hallway, the one that radiated a dark presence. The next morning, gray light filtered through the dirty window. He went outside and circled the building. Behind the hotel was a scattering of rusted-out trucks and old machinery, half-eaten by weeds. As he searched through the vehicles for a usable tire, he glanced up at the third-floor windows. There she was. A figure stood in the window of room 313. A pale woman with stringy black hair and a face like a dried-up corpse. Her eyes were hollow. She watched him silently. His knees went weak. He looked away and nearly dropped the crowbar he'd been holding. There didn't seem to be anything of much use, just lots of useless junk. He glanced back up at her window. She was gone.
Old creepy bitch.
Brennan pulled out his knife and decided he'd try to cut some pieces off the tires in the junk pile to make a patch. He had a hand pump in his truck's toolbox. He was feeling confident that he could fix the tire, then get the hell out of this place. Back at his truck, he crouched down and inspected the puncture hole again, pissed off, wondering who would do something so malicious. The hole wasn't that big, more like a thick ice pick stab. Thankfully, it hadn't gone through the sidewall. He figured he could jerry-rig a plug or use the torn rubber to make a patch that would get him far enough into town to get it fixed properly. The sun was already starting to sink into the gray, overcast sky. Brennan hurried and pulled one of the old tires from the junk pile. Using a few tools from his toolbox, he was able to craft a makeshift plug, melting rubber pieces together with his propane torch and shaving off the excess to form a snug fit. As he pumped the tire with his hand pump, a sharp crack of lightning tore through the sky nearby. A second later, the clouds opened, releasing sheets of cold rain. Brennan bolted back inside, soaked and frustrated. There was no way he was going to work in that storm. It looked like he'd have to stay another night. And this night would be worse. On his way up the stairs, heavy boots thudding on damp wood, Brennan heard it again, unmistakable now. A man was pleading somewhere on the second floor. The words were unintelligible, but desperate. Then came a sharp shift, uncontrollable laughter. A woman joined in this time. Her laugh equally unhinged. When he reached the third floor, the hallway was pitch dark. Maybe the power had gone out from the storm. He had no flashlight, and the only source of light was the faint orange glow of the old chandelier swinging gently in the stairwell. He patted his pockets and found his matchbox. He knew the direction to his room. It definitely wasn't toward that creepy woman's door. Striking a match, he held the flame low and crept forward toward room 302. The match burned too close to his fingers, and he had to light another. As he struck the match and raised it to see his path, a bolt of lightning flashed outside, and for just a moment, silhouetted in the hallway window, he saw someone standing still. Just one door down from his room. He froze. It was a woman, dressed all in black, her head draped in a long black lace veil. Her head was bowed. Brennan swallowed hard and said,
Hello?
No response, just the thunder rolling overhead. He quickly unlocked his room, stole one last glance at the figure, and muttered,
You're crazy. Hello? What are you doing?
Still nothing. He shut the door and locked it behind him. He thought of his hunting rifle stashed behind the seat in his truck. He wondered if he was going to need it. There were a few logs left by the hearth, and he sparked up another fire to keep warm. It was time to make supper. If he had to wait out the rain, he might as well eat. He propped a can of beans on the fire and chewed on some beef jerky, trying to calm himself. From somewhere beyond the walls, he heard voices again, muffled, shifting, just out of reach. Then the hallway lights flickered back on, dim and orange. He felt a momentary wave of relief as the soft glow pushed under the door crack. Still, he could see flickers of movement through that thin line of light. Footsteps, shadows. At around 11 p.m., Brennan lit a joint and went to smoke by the window. Rain lashed the glass, and wind howled through the old frame as he cracked it open. The gusts pushed in sharply, chilling the room. He took a few drags and knelt by the windowsill, his face lit faintly by the fire behind him. Out in the distance, across the tree-scattered plains, thunder rolled like a drum circle echoing across the sky. And then he saw it again. In the junk pile out back, a shadow, just standing there. It looked like a man, but darker than darkness. No detail, just a void in the shape of a person. Even without eyes, Brennan felt it stare. He squinted, leaned forward and whispered,
Is that the guy that stamped my tire?
Then louder.
Hey, what are you doing out there? It's pouring rain.
No response, no movement. The figure just stood, barely lit in the storm's flashes.
Fucking creep.
He kept watching him, unwilling to take his eyes off whoever or whatever it was. No way was he letting another tire get ruined. He needed to leave as soon as morning came. But a few minutes later, during a lull in the lightning, the man was gone. Brennan put out his joint and closed the window. His beans were ready. As he sat back down to eat, whispers floated from just outside the door, soft and close. Was that old lady still out there? He picked up his knife and crept to the door, cracked it open just an inch. No one. Down the hallway, one of the old lights flickered lazily. Suddenly, a door burst open on the far end. Not the old woman's room, but the one next to it. A man came screaming into the hallway, naked, covered in filth, laughing like a child. Brennan stepped back in horror and barely left the door open enough to peek. The man giggled as he sprinted down the stairs, wild and deranged. That must have been the voice, the pleading and laughing from before. Brennan clutched his knife tighter. The door he came from slammed shut from someone inside. He closed and locked his own door again, breathing heavily. Sleep would be hard to find that night, but eventually, the fire's dying glow pulled him into uneasy dreams. He was having a dream. In the dream, he was lying in his bed as an old woman's voice called to him. He looked at the fire. It was raging. The flames began to turn red as the woman's voice grew louder and louder. He sat up in bed and walked to the door. Flickering red light spilled from the crack beneath it. He stepped into the hallway, now bathed in a crimson glow that thickened into darkness at the far end. It felt like a black hole was pulling him in. He took a few steps forward, not knowing why he was moving, only that he was compelled. There was no staircase, just a long, endless corridor. The chanting grew louder, his name repeated again and again. He moved like he was hypnotized, drunk, a zombie lured by sound.
Brennan! Brennan! Come here, Brennan!
The doors on that side of the hallway were all open. A few were pitch black inside. One of them revealed the man he'd seen before, naked, filthy, grinning with rotted teeth. He waved at Brennan. In the next doorway, a woman of equal disgust smiled at him with greasy brown hair and teeth just as decayed. Seeing them triggered something. Brennan snapped into awareness. He was just feet away from the black void at the end of the hallway. He whispered to himself,
Wake up.
And just like that, he did. Only now he was standing in front of room 313 with his hand on the doorknob. He stumbled back, gasping for air. From inside the room came a low, rhythmic chanting. Beads rattled. The door glowed faintly red from candlelight leaking beneath it. He bolted back to his room, slammed the door, and locked it. His heart pounded in his chest. He had never felt terror like this before. Whatever that witch had been doing in there, it was dark, evil. Still breathing heavily, he scanned the room, the dying fire casting long shadows. He flipped on the lamp, checking for any sign of someone hiding or of her. Nothing. He sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to calm his nerves. Maybe he was just psyching himself out. Thunder cracked overhead and the rain intensified, hammering the old roof. His thoughts drifted to the drive back into town. All that mud. He hoped the tire would hold up. The old clock in the room read 1:58 a.m. Brennan pulled out a flask from his travel bag and took a few shots. He threw the last log onto the fire and lay back down. Around 2:30 a.m., he passed out again. The room felt thick with fog, heavy. Maybe the weed and liquor helped. Sometime before 5 a.m., he awoke, this time lying on the hallway floor, being dragged by one arm. The witch. She was stronger than she looked, filthy, wild-eyed, her black fingernails digging into his wrist. She hissed strange words, pulling him toward room 313. He kicked and twisted until he broke free. She shrieked and flung a handful of black liquid from a silver aspergillum. The drops sizzled on his skin, burning slightly. She scratched cymbals in the air, her chanting rising to a screech. Brennan scrambled to his feet and sprinted to his room. He grabbed his bag and keys, tore down the stairs, and burst through the back door into the wet, dark morning. It had stopped raining. He had to get out. He threw his things into the truck, grabbed his rifle, slung it over his back, and pumped the tire full of adrenaline. The patch job was holding, for now. He kept glancing toward the front door, half expecting her to come after him. If she did, he'd shoot. His chest heaved, heart pounding. Then rage took over. He ran back inside, stormed into the lobby, and shouted at the front desk clerk who sat calmly reading a newspaper.
I know you know what's going on here. You're a bunch of fucking freaks, and I'm reporting this place as soon as I get back to town.
The clerk didn't flinch. He raised the newspaper slowly, and Brennan caught sight of the date on it. It said 1952, but present year was 1964. He shook his head in disgust of how weird this place was. Brennan rushed out the front door. He smashed a lamp, kicked over a chair, and peeled out in the mud, his tires spinning wildly before gaining traction. He didn't look in the rearview mirror until he hit the main road. When he did, the hotel was already gone, like it had never existed. The patched tire held up for nearly 100 miles before giving out just a few miles from a mechanic's shop. Brennan walked the last stretch, rolling the tire beside him, not wanting to damage anything on his prized 1960 International Scout. The mechanic patched it up properly, and Brennan rolled it back to his truck. As he bolted the tire back on, Brennan muttered,
I'm done. I'm heading home.
And that's what he did. Drove 18 hours straight from Montana to Sacramento, wired, shaken, haunted. Visions of the witch followed him. Her black gown, her lace-covered face, flickering in the shadows along the roadside. He didn't look. He just kept driving. For years, he was plagued by nightmares, visions of her face, her voice calling him through darkness, the scent of candle smoke and rot. He feared she had cursed him. Many years later, in his 60s, Brennan found himself back in Montana. He'd taken the Scout out for a rare road trip, carefully maintained all these years. A friend rode with him. They had time to spare. He knew the way. He'd dreamed of that place for 20 years. This time, he had a spare tire. He wondered if the hotel still stood. Surely not. It had barely been standing in the 60s. By 2002, it had to be a ruin. As they rolled down that familiar dirt road, Brennan's heart began to race. The sign that once read Crow House Hotel was still there, weathered blank by time. His friend sat up, looking around, waiting to see the hotel Brennan had talked about all these years. But it was gone. No building, no foundation, nothing. Just an old rusted Ford F1, swallowed by grass and weeds. The same one Brennan had seen parked there before. He floored it, kicking up a trail of dust.
Let's get the hell out of here.
They drove for hours, finding a good spot to fish and camp. That night, Brennan slept soundly, rifle clutched in his hands. He thought to himself,
This is probably the last trip I'll ever take with that scout.
what a fitting send-off, bringing her past that haunted place one last time. That old witch had something planned for him. He was sure of it. He hoped she was dead and rotting in hell, with everyone else in that godforsaken hotel. He was thankful for the life he'd lived, because if he hadn't woken up that night, he might not be here at all.